Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham and I'm here with the Moon Carl. I'm representing BeInCrypto and we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff today about Bitcoin, Crypto Purge, tons of really great topics. If you are interested in BeInCrypto, make sure to go and check them out and join their Telegram at BeInCrypto community on Telegram. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself to get started?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me here. So my name is Carl. I am the owner of the YouTube channel The Moon, and I make one video every day on YouTube about Bitcoin. I also do a lot of content over on Twitter. I have a passion for Bitcoin economics and monetary policies and monetary history, and all of these things just blend perfectly together. Yeah, I just love what I do, and that's why I'm doing it every single day. And yeah, passion for Bitcoin. That's what I have.
So, when did you get started with cryptocurrency and blockchain?
So a few years ago, I heard about Bitcoin, and the interesting part is that before I learned about Bitcoin, I had a lot of knowledge about the economic system, the financial system, and the monetary system that we have today. How money
Mhm.
works, how the Federal Reserve works, how central banks works, and why fiat money is not a good form of money. So all of this knowledge um, I was very, very interested in all of these things before I heard about Bitcoin. So when I finally did hear about Bitcoin, it immediately made sense to me because I had kind of the backstory to it. And I usually say that I think the value in Bitcoin doesn't necessarily lie in Bitcoin itself, but rather the value of Bitcoin lies in the flaws of the current monetary system. So I think most people probably hear about Bitcoin and then they end up in the rabbit hole and they research the monetary system we have. But I actually did it the other way around there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting because something that I've always said is that I don't think it's Bitcoin or blockchain that's so hard to understand. I think it's that people first lack the understanding of fiat, which confuses them as to why we would need cryptocurrency to begin with. So, do you want to just maybe speak a little bit about the things that most people sort of overlook regarding fiat currency, and then that's what sort of leads them down to believe that Bitcoin wouldn't be viable? Can you explain for some of the people who might not have that knowledge or just never came around that information?
yeah. So on a day-to-day basis, it would seem to the average person that the dollar is stable and that the Swedish krona is stable and that all the other fiat currencies are stable. And on a day-to-day basis, it's even true because a dollar today is pretty much the exact same value as a dollar tomorrow and even the next week. However, when you look at the more longer term, then you will see that central banks and even commercial banks, they inflate the currency supply, and this puts downward pressure on the value of the currency itself, of course, through inflation. And inflation is a slow process, so this is why we don't see it on the daily basis or even weekly basis. But when you look at the purchasing power of the dollar for the past 100 years, you can see that the dollar has lost 97% of its value. And the same goes for all the other fiat currencies. They have lost almost all of its value, and they continuously lose more and more value as we see more and more printing of currencies. So
Mhm.
you have to look at the time frame because if we compare Bitcoin and the dollar, then I have to agree that on a daily basis and weekly basis, the dollar is a better store of value than Bitcoin. It's just facts because on a daily basis, Bitcoin can go down 20%, it can go up 20%. So it's not a very good store of value in the short term. But when you widen the range, let's say over 1 year, over 2 years, let's say 5 years. If you look at the past 5 years, then Bitcoin has been going up in value and dramatically actually. And looking at the dollar, it continuously loses value. So if you want to save and invest for the next 10, 20, 30 years, then I suggest you look into something where there is no central authority that decides how much will be printed. And obviously, the dollar, we're seeing it getting printed in the trillions currently. And that goes for the euro and that goes for all the other fiat currencies currently. We're seeing a lot of money printing, so-called quantitative easing. And
Mhm.
Bitcoin, of course, is the exact opposite. Bitcoin will never have an increased inflation. It's the exact opposite, actually. Inflation will shrink, and the halving, which is coming up now very, very soon, will be the exact opposite to quantitative easing. It's actually quantitative hardening, is what I like to call it, because we're seeing the inflation get cut in half.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that we're seeing this big divergence right now between Bitcoin and fiat currencies, where fiat is getting more and more printed, and Bitcoin is doing the opposite. And I think that um, this will become a very good selling point for Bitcoin, because so far Bitcoin has only been around when stock markets are surging, when real estate is going up,
Mm.
when people have money left over, when people are consuming on credit. This has been the case for the past 10 years, and I think that this is dramatically about to change. And this is where Bitcoin truly serves its true purpose, because there is no trust involved. You don't have to trust someone not to use a printing press, and you don't have to trust anyone to do anything, actually. Bitcoin is a mathematical process, so you only have to trust in mathematics. So if you
Yeah.
believe that 2 plus 2 is 4, and if you think that 2 plus 2 will be 4 tomorrow, there's no trust. It's just a fact, right? And the Bitcoin adds a new block all the time. It's like it's an ongoing. It's like its own little organism, self-sustaining
Hmm.
organism, and I think it's beautiful, and it's the perfect mechanism for money. It's the perfect technology for money, and that's why I'm extremely bullish for Bitcoin for the next few years, especially now that we see this financial crisis dramatically escalate.
Yeah. Do you think that with everything going on with quantitative easing, do you think that's going to like coupled with the Bitcoin halving coming up, do you think that's really gonna push people to go out there and buy and really get a bull run going? What are your thoughts like because that's just about a month away now. So what are your thoughts? Like what do you think is gonna
Yeah.
happen in a month?
I think that probably we won't see any dramatic price swings within the next month. I think that this halving is not something that we should be looking for the short term. It's more like a longer term thing for the next year, maybe even 2 years. And of course, the selling pressures from miners will be cut in half, right? Because miners that are mining, they many of them, of course, sell the Bitcoin at the mine to cover electricity costs and property costs and all of this. But now the selling pressure will be lower, and we can see from the past two halvings that because of the halvings, the Bitcoin price did get dramatic increases in the price. We're talking about hundreds of percent in the next few months and years, and I think that we're going to see a repeat of this. And but yeah, I think that this is more like a longer term thing for the next 2 years, not for the next months. So it's even possible. It's even possible that Bitcoin might have a sell off uh, during the halving or close around the halving, because we've seen this perfect scenario play out twice before, that the Bitcoin price pumps like crazy during the halving. And usually when something is very, very obvious, then the market tends to punish the majority that is
Mm.
expecting this obvious, right? So when I look at the charts, when I see this perfect triangle pattern that just looks like it's gonna perfectly break to the upside, then I just realize that everyone is looking at it, everyone expects this to happen, and usually, yeah, we see the majority get punished by the markets, and that's why I'm a little bit cautious with using the halving for the short-term trading. I really believe that it's more like an investor's indicator, and I think that this is a perfect time to buy Bitcoin. Now that we're seeing Bitcoin being this oversold, we have never ever seen Bitcoin being this oversold at the time of a halving before. The two
Mm.
past halvings, Bitcoin was much higher relative, and you can use the RSI, the Relative Strength Index, to measure these things.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And last time, like for the last halving up into the peak, it I think that was like between a year and a half, somewhere around that. So you're saying this might be somewhat similar and also in that long term, like 2, 3 years potentially even, right?
Yes, and actually, if you would have asked me like 2 years ago, I would have expected this to be a perfect 4 year cycle, which means that we
Mm.
actually should have been much higher now, rather we should probably be at maybe 14, 15,000 currently. But it does seem like these cycles are getting longer. So we are seeing diminishing returns and longer time frame. It is possible that we might have to wait a little bit longer than we've seen for the past two halvings. This could have a lot to do with what I just said, that the majority is expecting a huge price increase. And I think the price increase will still come. It's just that maybe the timing will be completely different this time.
I'm curious about like your thoughts around the majority expecting this to happen. From my experience, I've seen it's more like very savvy crypto people and like more experienced traders are aware of the halving. But I know a lot of people who are just invested in cryptocurrency, but they have no idea about like the actual tech or like the halvings coming up. Do you feel like the knowledge around the halving is widespread enough for that to be the case?
You know what? That's a very good point, and I found myself thinking about this also. And I think it's true what you're saying, that of course it's just a very small group of people that even understand what the halving is technically, fundamentally.
Hmm.
So it is a very good point. I think that, of course, when you go out on the street and you ask 100 random people, maybe even five people even heard about Bitcoin before, maybe 10
Yeah.
people, and to expect them to understand the halving, I mean, that's too much to ask for. I don't even think that one out of 100 is going to give you a sufficient answer to what the halving is. So,
Yeah.
you know what? That's a good point, and that's maybe a great argument for the fact that we will see a very big price increase sooner than maybe I'm expecting right now.
True. Yeah. I mean, it's always good to prepare for the worst scenario rather than hope for I mean, we can hope for the best but prepare for the worst, right? So, like how do you feel COVID is affecting the prices right now?
Yeah, so we did see a dramatic sell-off in Bitcoin when we saw the first initial dump in the stock markets due to the big fear surrounding COVID.
Yeah.
And this is something that, of course, is not very surprising. I've been talking about this for the past couple of years and even the past few months, that in this financial crisis that I'm expecting, I believe that when we see this initial dump in the stock markets, I think that Bitcoin is also going to sell off, and even gold, just like we saw back in the previous financial crisis, because when people are fearful, when people are losing a lot of money in the stock markets, then they have to sell uh, other assets also to cover other losses. And
Hmm.
it's not really a matter of choice. It's just a matter of they have to sell to cover losses. When people get margin calls from their broker, they simply have no other choice. So, and also, um, Bitcoin is still regarded as a risky investment in the mainstream circles, and everyone who bought like $10,000 worth of stocks, and maybe they hold $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, they just diversified a little bit. They will be liquidating the Bitcoin much faster than they liquidate anything else, because they just diversified a little bit. So we're seeing all of these
Hmm.
so-called weak hands getting shaken out, and that's why I've been expecting a initial dump in the Bitcoin price in this financial crisis, and now we are seeing this financial crisis play out. And of course, we can make arguments back and forth, exactly what's triggered this. And of course, it's obvious that COVID is a major part of this dramatic selling we've seen in the stock markets. However, like I've been talking about on my channel for the past 2 years, 3 years, the debt levels have been insane. We've seen very low interest rates, even negative in some countries. So we have seen an environment that has created a huge mountain of debt, and it is inevitable for this to eventually come back down again. You cannot increase debt forever. It's like a big pyramid scheme where eventually the bubble will burst, and I think we are seeing the popping of the bubble. And in the beginning, I was saying that I thought that COVID is like a pin to pop the bubble, but now it's obvious that it's more like a bazooka popping the bubble. It's like it's much more
Yeah.
fierce and much more dramatic than just like a little bit, a pin. So Um, yeah, we're seeing something that has never happened before. We're seeing a huge debt bubble being popped simultaneously as we're seeing a massive health crisis, as people call it. And I think it doesn't even matter if the virus is extremely dangerous or not, because what's really dangerous is the fear that people have, and people staying at home, and the economy just shutting down. This is the real threat, not the virus itself, because I mean, I'm not a doctor, but looking at the death rates, it's not as bad as maybe it seems in the media. And I think that it's a little bit unreasonable to shut down the whole economy for this virus. And yeah, so basically, what we're seeing now is something that has never happened before. We're seeing something extremely unprecedented, and this is why, of course, also Bitcoin will be very unpredictable now, because we're seeing very, very dramatic things happening all around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that you point out that, like, I'd say the majority of news is negative, even though recently they said that the new cases is starting to decline. So you'd think that there would be some positive news, but you still see the same negative news. So it does feel like the mainstream media is kind of making this seem worse than it actually is going to be. So do you think that we'll see a recovery in Bitcoin kind of alongside the stock market? So like say, in 3, 4 months or whatever the timeline happens to be, if the stock market is back to where it was like at the beginning of the year, do you think Bitcoin will generally do the same thing, or what are your thoughts there?
So first of all, there is um, for the stock markets to come back up again, then there needs to be financial stimulus. If the
Hmm.
central banks just don't do anything, if they completely just step back and don't touch anything, then I am sure we would right now see the beginning of the biggest financial crisis in modern time. Even worse than the Great Depression, because we're seeing the fundamentals be way off. We're seeing price to earnings way off. I can go on and on talking about how way off the economy is. It's literally off the charts. However, we do know from history, uh, for example, 2008, we can see that central banks, they have the power to print money, and they can also manipulate interest rates. These are the two things they can do. And we are already seeing them react in an extreme way. We're seeing them react in such a way that we've never seen before. Printing trillions of dollars globally, not only the Federal Reserve, but globally. And that's
Hmm.
not the only thing, because not only are they printing money and buying government debt, they're also printing money and now buying corporate debt. This is something that we have not seen before. And we're seeing that in the Federal Reserve. We're seeing this happen in Sweden. We're seeing this happen globally. And what I expect is that, well, if I can see the threat of this big depression, then obviously these central banks can also see it. These people, they know what they're doing, I hope. So that is also why we're seeing them react in this extremely dramatic way, because they know what happens if they don't do this. And that's why I also think that they are probably going to widen the range of assets that they will be buying with this newly printed currency. I think that we will see the Federal Reserve soon start buying stocks. I think that we're going to see this globally. And at this point, of course, that's also something we've never seen before. I mean, now we're talking about basically free markets being something I mean, if we ever had free markets, then they would be gone by then. I mean, seeing the central banks printing money literally and just buying stocks. I mean,
Hmm.
I see so many problems with this. Not to
Yeah.
mention the fact that we're seeing inflation, and this can lead to hyperinflation, but also what stocks will be bought, what stocks will not be bought. Why are you gonna save this stock and not that stock? So I mean, there are so many moral hazards here, yeah, and this is something that this is the true threat to, or this is the true problem when you have someone who essentially is controlling the currency, because this authority can decide these things. And in my opinion, there shouldn't be this power to anyone. This power should be distributed individually for everyone, just like with gold or with Bitcoin. There is just a supply and demand thing, and there's no central authority. So yeah, we're seeing very, very interesting times. We are literally witnessing historical times because, like I said, everything we're seeing now we have never seen before, and I think that's interesting, very, very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're very, very close and kept up with everything going on with the YouTube crypto purge. Do you want to dive into that a little bit? I know you recently put out a video. I can't remember the two people that you named, but I recently saw a video that you were just recently talking about it. I know you've kept up with it a lot. So do you want to kind of bring people up to speed with what's been happening?
Yeah, so this is something that started, I think, was maybe 3, 4 months ago, where out of nothing we saw some crypto YouTubers getting these warnings, and after one warning you get a strike, and if you get 3 strikes within a 3 month period, I think, then YouTube permanently deletes your channel. It's gone. You're gone forever. You have to start over again.
Hmm.
And we started seeing these warnings and strikes happen. And back then, most YouTubers in crypto were affected, me included. I got a warning, I got a strike, and my friend M in crypto also got warning, strike. And yeah, most of the people I know in crypto got warning and strikes. And after a while, YouTube came out and said that this was just a mistake, and everyone actually got their channel back as it was before. And we thought that was it. Now everything is fine again. But well, we've seen this just continue and continue, and silently more and more people have been getting these warnings and strikes. And just in the past week, we did see 2 crypto YouTube channels get one warning and 3 strikes at the same time. Usually, you get a warning and a strike, and you can get an explanation maybe how you can prevent this in the future. But now they got everything at the same time. So um, as the rule says, now your channel is deleted, and that's what happened. These people got their channels deleted. Now, luckily, they actually got everything back, so it seems like YouTube once again realized their mistake. But the thing is that we are never getting any official responses. We're not getting um, any tips on how we can prevent this in the future. And also, there's never an explanation as to exactly what we did wrong. Um, there's like they say that we um, we did something against the community guidelines, but the community guidelines, it's like a big box of papers, like it's like hundreds of I mean it's just too much to read, and if you cannot just
Yeah.
say, I mean, we need something more specific than that. They don't go specific, so this means that in the future we can't know how to prevent this. And what I think is that this is yeah, it is a mistake because no one is doing any harmful content or any bad content. At least these people that have been getting these warnings and strikes are just doing normal videos about Bitcoin. And the video that I had warnings and strikes for was just a completely normal video, me talking about Bitcoin, some technical analysis, some news, and just talking about the financial markets, talking about central banking. Nothing, nothing out of the ordinary at all. So
Hmm.
no one really understands why this is happening, and yeah, YouTube is still yet to give us an official, clear explanation.
Yeah, and then who were those two crypto YouTubers that you had recently just posted about? Did they get banned or deleted, or was it just a strike recently?
They got completely deleted, but after a
Wow.
couple of days, they got their channels back.
Okay.
But imagine just getting your channel completely deleted, and imagine the emotional shock, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's happening with my channel? Was that it? And is my future gone now? Because all of us YouTubers, of course, we had quit our daily jobs. This is our job now. So
Hmm.
some of us, I mean, just losing the YouTube channel, then the income stream is just gone, right? Um, and without an explanation, it's just very, very frustrating and emotionally very tough, of course. And I know some of these YouTubers have families that need to be supported, and it's just another example, I guess, of why we need to go away from centralized things. Right? YouTube is a centralized platform, and that means they have central control over everything. So
Hmm.
yeah, I hope in the future we can see decentralized platforms getting a bigger, wider audience. Because I mean, so far YouTube is by far the best platform to reach a wide audience. I hope that in the future we'll see these alternatives grow, and maybe we can see yeah, bigger competition in this space.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of what I do is reviewing and looking at different social media and blockchain, blockchain social media platforms and crypto monetized social media platforms. So I'm curious, are you on any like alternative platforms, or do you plan on potentially getting on any other platforms?
As of now, I am not on any other platform. I think probably I should look into these alternatives. I know some of these alternatives. It's just that as of right now, YouTube is by far the biggest, and if you want to reach a big audience, then there's just no other option. I mean, of course, I could pull some of my viewers onto these other alternatives, but to grow into the bigger numbers, then you need to take advantage of the big pool of people that YouTube has. So
Yeah.
I don't see any big change in this in the immediate future. This is, if anything, gonna take many years in that case, because it's hard to get people away from YouTube as a viewer, because on YouTube there's just so much more content. It's so much more comfortable. People are used to it. So these things probably take a long, long time.
Yeah, one of the biggest criticisms I get from my following on blockchain is that I'm still using centralized things like YouTube, but I explain to a lot of people that it has the best, like for example, on a lot of blogs, the only type of video that you could embed on a blog is a YouTube video, or maybe like Dailymotion or Vimeo. But there are those are other centralized video platforms, anyways. So regardless, it's very very challenging to have the functionality and the support and the performance when you're using more decentralized platforms. But I would definitely love to see you on platforms like LBRY and BitTube and other video platforms. Something that I do think is really interesting, especially for you, is that you can sign up for some of these platforms where it will automatically take your video off YouTube and then upload it, and you don't even have to do anything. So if you're interested in that, I can share it with you after. But I think it's definitely something that would be really really cool for you, and then you could just sign in and you just see, oh, I made money. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, so those are all the questions that I had. Is there anything else that you would like to cover or talk about before we end this off?
No, I think we covered very interesting topics. And as I said in the beginning, I mean, I do have a passion for Bitcoin and monetary policies and all of this stuff. So if anyone is interested in listening to more of this stuff, they can just go and subscribe to my channel, because, like I said, I make one video every single day about this stuff. And I also have a passion for education. I love educating people. I love explaining things in a simple manner. So I think that's why people like listening to my videos, because I think they see that I really enjoy talking about this stuff. It's not something I do just to have a job, right? I just really love doing these videos. So yeah, I will continue to do this for as long as YouTube allows me to do this.
Yeah, yeah. And then after that, hopefully, or I mean, given that happens, if they stop allowing you, hopefully we'll see you on some of these other platforms, because I'm sure everyone would love to have you there. Anyways, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. I think everyone can learn a lot from you regarding Bitcoin and crypto, and even like fiat currency, and getting a better understanding of how everything works. So again, thank you so much for coming on. And make sure to go and subscribe to his channel, check him out, follow him on Twitter and anywhere else that he's on. And this was on behalf of BeInCrypto. So if you also want to get into their Telegram, make sure to go and join that as well at BeInCrypto community on Telegram. Anyways, again, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Cheers.